Well, Saturday could be make or break when it comes to Georgia and Texas, the two facing off there. And Georgia hoping to be on the right side of maybe not another loss, because a record, it could be doomsday. On the other side there, Texas, they've done their part, the new members in the SEC. Perfect on the year under Steve Sarkisian. You can't ask for pretty much more when it comes to Longhorns, looking pretty good and keeping that crown when it comes to SEC in sight. Take a look at it Saturday at 7:30 Eastern time. It'll be the 6th installment all time between the two. Texas with a slight edge there, 4-1. But when it comes to Longhorns, they've won 11 straight home games when it comes to playing in Austin. Pretty good. Then UGA, 50 straight games versus non-Alabama teams. Last loss 2020 versus Florida, which was 8 in the land. Oh, that's not it. We have more coming Saturday a little bit earlier, 3:30 Eastern. The Tide. Well, and hopefully maybe they won't get that second loss, because what we saw not too long ago did have a chance to bounce back 5-1 on the year, taking on a Tennessee team that hopes to be in the same conversation along there with Josh Heupel. We'll see how that pans out between the two sides there. That one, of course, Saturday as well. So when it comes to elimination of both sides there, you don't want to have that second loss. Both squads coming in at 5-1. And it escaped the upsets in Week 7 for both squads there. Alabama won 16 in the past 17 meetings, but Tennessee won the last meeting against Alabama in Knoxville. Almost a smoke show there, 52-49. For more on this, I want to bring in my guy, Brandon Marcello, and some big games on tap here, Brandon, because when you think about the keys for both sides, Alabama and Tennessee, I'm curious your thoughts on that, and also what they can avoid in maybe the CFP elimination game.
Well, number one, both teams are coming into this kind of limping, hobbling a little bit because of their performances the last 3 weeks, really. And really my big question is more so on Tennessee with their offense. They have struggled to score points in each of their last 3 games, not eclipsing 25 points in any of those games. And frankly, Nico Iamaleava at quarterback has struggled. He hasn't hit 200 yards passing the last 2 games. And for that matter, he hasn't thrown a touchdown. It seems like that the book is out on Tennessee's offense, and the defensive coordinators are reading through it very well. It started a little bit at OU just a few weeks ago, a game they won, but it was perfected by Arkansas a week and a half ago when the Razorbacks really shut down that offense. But more concerning is that their offense couldn't get going back at home in the friendly confines there in Neyland Stadium. And you go against an Alabama team that, yes, is reeling a little bit, especially defensively on 3rd and even 4th downs, as we've seen in past games against Georgia, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. But Tennessee hasn't been able to move the ball really against anybody. So I'm much more concerned about Tennessee going into this game than I am Alabama, because Jalen Milroe, the quarterback for the Tide, seemingly performs at his best in every single game. It's just that the defense has let them down a little bit.
Taking a look at it here, you see the Tide, assuming they do pull it out here. But I want to go back to Tennessee, because outside of this weekend's game against the Crimson Tide, you look at it, the only other game that they have an opportunity to kind of push their resume up there, you see it November 16th against Georgia. Is this one of those, this has to be done if you're Tennessee to keep the conversation going to one of those CFP spots there?
Potentially, especially because it's a home game. You got to win your home games in the SEC to really have a really solid shot at making the playoff right now. But having said that, a second loss does not eliminate Tennessee entirely, because they will have a very nice bounce back opportunity, not just potentially at a top 5 Georgia team, but a top 5 Georgia team on the road, which will help increase that strength of schedule considerably. So even with the loss, Tennessee is not eliminated from this at all, in my opinion. And so they still have that opportunity against Georgia. I would say somewhat the same thing for Alabama. This is a must-win, obviously, for both teams, just as far as their psyche moving forward, because you don't want to have a lot of margin of error going forward. But there are still opportunities for both programs to continue to win and get in that playoff hunt. But when you get to 2 losses, getting to 3 is going to be very difficult for the SEC to get another playoff team in, because at that point you're talking about 4 SEC teams being in the playoff with 3 losses.
That's something you don't want to see. They do have 3 other opportunities against ranked teams in terms of Alabama, but as you said, this is a must-win for Tennessee to stay in that conversation. Georgia's chances here, they do have that 1 loss on the resume. If it gets to 2, as you mentioned, it's a no-go, but with that 1, are they still alive and healthy there?
Oh, absolutely. I think even if they lose this game, again, they've got opportunities to continue to win. And Georgia, for as much as we look at that loss against Alabama, I'm more impressed with them in the way they've responded. Obviously, that second half against the Tide, they were fantastic in responding and had a chance to win it in the final 80 seconds, taking the lead there before the incredible heroics of Ryan Williams. But Georgia and Carson Beck in particular, a quarterback, has been fantastic ever since then. This past week, he threw for a career high in yardage against Mississippi State, completed the most passes ever in Georgia's history. That offense is rolling. But again, they're going on the road into a hostile environment, just like they did at Alabama. And Texas, the difference here is they've got the nation's #1 defense. They're outscoring opponents by 221 points, their best total since 1915. But the Longhorns have not really faced a big test. Their biggest game so far was on the road at Michigan, and we know what Michigan has become. They're very one-dimensional offensively and are bordering on falling out of the top 25. So this is definitely their toughest test, but their defense has a lot of confidence, and Quinn Ewers at quarterback is fantastic, but he did show a little bit of rust in his return from the abdominal injury last week in the Red River rivalry.
Yeah, we see those numbers there when it comes to Vegas, those odds there to make the CFP -2,000 and +350 to win the CFP. Assuming that they're unblemished after this one, reaching 7-0, is it safe to say that Texas could be a lock for one of those playoff spots despite what they have on their resume?
Yeah, potentially, because then they have a lot of room for error. And by a lot of room, I mean potentially dropping 2 more games and maybe not even making the SEC championship game and still getting into the playoff. That schedule has been very conducive for them to be a playoff berth team, regardless of what happens in this game because of what they were able to do earlier this season. But again, the back half of the schedule, much tougher than the first half. We thought the first half was tough because of Michigan. Michigan is not everything we thought they were going to be this year. They're even worse. But circle Texas A&M, the return of the rivalry game there. Texas A&M could potentially be fighting for a playoff spot of its own when they meet up in November for a huge, huge showdown.
That's crazy to think. And you mentioned there that they could possibly get in without winning the championship in the SEC. You know, if you're the committee, you know, what outweighs that in your eyes here, Brandon?
Well, if you're an SEC team and you've got some road victories on that resume and you've got 2 losses or less, you're pretty much almost guaranteed a spot in this new 12 playoff format because of the strength of schedule of the SEC and, for that matter, the Big Ten. You could say the same thing about 2 lost teams in there. And Texas, again, has some margin to move around a little bit and maybe have a trip up here or there. But again, it also depends on where those trip ups are. You don't want to lose to a team that finishes below 500 or right around there. But Texas has been so explosive offensively, so dominant defensively. You really can't circle any games on that calendar and say that's a surefire loss or something that can be really testy for them when you talk about teams that are bordering on that 500 record or potentially just an 8-win team down the stretch.
Well, when it comes to Texas, let's say they're maybe looking for 2 wins on Saturday, not just the one on the field, the one on the sideline with Bevo and Uga. If we remember 2019, the Sugar Bowl here, I want to show the people at home. You remember this, Brandon? Uga there wasn't even expecting Bevo to come and give him the horns. What was your thoughts when you saw this?
Uga ain't afraid of anybody. No man, no beast. He will not back down. Bevo, though, would have won that fight. But we've seen Uga in the past biting players after touchdowns there between the hedges in Athens. Now going on the road at Texas. I wouldn't want to be in the same vicinity as those two if they have that one showdown once again near an end zone. I'd be about 20 yards away. Keep me away from all the carnage.
Yeah, Uga might not be scared, but he was scared that day. Bevo ruling the ring there, hands down. I put my money, if it was +20 on Uga or -120 on Bevo, I'm going with Bevo, easily.
Well, Uga's going for the knees every time.
We will see Saturday if that is the case. Brandon, Marcello, as always, tapping in on Saturday, which would be very interesting for those 4 squads and the meeting up there in the SEC. And, boy, make or break for a lot. But don't forget our friends at 24/7, always with the wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, and transfer portal updates. As always, keep you tapped in on college sports.